Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We've survived the year so far, and we've probably got past April Fool's Day without any big jokes played on us, hopefully. But hey, I just wanted to thank my sponsors, take a minute to thank them for bringing this content, for allowing us to do what we do, and to keep us rolling here and allowing us to pay our editors and our sound guy and all that kind of fun stuff. So Keto Mojo, thank you so much. They are my go-to for checking ketones and double checking my continuous glucose monitors. This allows us to know if we're on track and getting ready for summer. So keto-mojo.com. They're doing some great work in the community. They're traveling around and really helping a lot of people. So now that continuous glucose monitors are going over the counter, it sounds like this is a great way to double check and make sure that your monitors are working fine. And also, of course, health code GetHealth, GETHLTH.com. Delicious vanilla and chocolate shakes with great protein content. You've heard us talk about them a lot. Their name keeps coming up spontaneously on the podcast from my guests because they're really helping a lot of people get their nutrition right, especially seniors who like that sweet taste, but really need that nutritional content and staying away from the seed oils and sugars. So I want to thank my sponsors and thank you for continuing to listen, and have a great day. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I brought in a ringer today. Gosh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be worth your time too. So Dr. Robert Lufkin, we actually had him on low-carb MD, so you can go back and listen to that episode. It was a great discussion. And he's back to kind of atone for all the lies he told in medical school, right? That you were teaching people. So that's your book. And it's so amazing, Doc. I mean, we had a great time last time talking about how much of the stuff we learned that you look now and say, we had it 100% backwards, and maybe some of these guys who are looking at functional medicine and all these different things that we thought was, or at least I did, I thought was hocus pocus stuff. And you start realizing, oh my goodness, these things have a huge, huge impact. So you're doing some great work. And so tell people about your book and what you're doing, about you, a little background on your history. You're a good USC and UCLA guy, right? You did both?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brian. First of all, I'm a huge fan of your work, and it's a real honor and pleasure to be on the program today. So, so my name's Rob Lufkin. My book is Lies I Taught in Medical School, and it's about sort of an awakening that I had, and well, first of all, if people hear the title, you think lies and who teaches lies, but actually, if you understand medical education or science, it's all about unfolding the truth, and the truth keeps changing, or as we understand things better, things change like that. So let's see, my story is I'm a physician. I specialize in radiology, and I spent my whole career as a full-time professor at either UCLA or USC medical schools, where I still am at one of them. But everything, like so many people in this space, I think everything was going fine with me. I was following what I thought was healthy, healthy lifestyle and everything. And I came down with 4 chronic diseases that sort of forced me to relook and reconsider the knowledge that I had, what I'd been teaching, what my colleagues were still teaching. And that was really the basis for this book, that I uncovered a lot of flaws in my thinking and my understanding of what I now believe to be a healthy lifestyle, which transformed my life. And I think, unfortunately, sadly, many, if not most doctors, still don't fully understand this or understand the possibilities of it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing because I think as doctors that I think people have to have the mindset that we do. Like when you say lies you taught, it's not like you were intentionally lying to people, but everyone told you this is the way it's done, this is how it works, and we just pass it along, right? It's like a game of telephone. When someone gets it wrong, everyone just passes around that crazy thing. By the end, it's some crazy idea. And so things that we thought, oh yeah, of course, like diabetes, you don't have enough insulin, give everyone insulin. That will lower their sugars. And you're not thinking from the whole metabolic perspective. And no one, it seems like no one says, wait a minute. And I think in medicine too, I remember rounding and the attending, there'd be one person who asked a bunch of questions. The attending would get so annoyed, like, look, this is just the way it is, because they don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as the lies, I love the quote from I repeat it a lot. Is from Sir William Osler, one of the greatest physicians of all time, who made one of the greatest quotes about medical education when he was addressing a graduating class of medical students, and he said, the quote is, "Gentlemen." Because back then, 120 years ago, most of them were men, if not gentlemen. And he said, "Gentlemen, I have a confession to make. 50% of what you've just learned, what we've taught you, is incorrect." And furthermore, we don't know which half it is. And that's sort of the nature of science and medicine. Like we say, it's constantly evolving, and we all have to question our beliefs and be open to new things. And I try to stay open-minded as much as I can myself.
Yeah, and it's such a huge thing because certain things you start asking questions, they go, "You're a quack. You're talking about crazy stuff." Like lifestyle and sleep and stress, and so it's so outside. It's amazing. I'm actually still blown away how many patients come in, and I'll start talking about stress, sleep, and they're like, "You're the first doctor. Why are you asking these things? Like, what does that have to do with anything?" Right? When you look at metabolic stuff, you go, "You're sleeping 4 hours a night, and your
Yeah.
sugars are high." You know what I mean? These kind of things that we just we just said we have to give you a pill to get the like that's the mindset now. It seems like we just throw a pill at everything. Your blood pressure's high. Not let's not think why is your blood pressure high?
Yeah, yeah, and I think the medical system obviously is designed to deliver a pill or a surgery, and that's what patients expect. That's what patients prefer because it's simple, and the patient doesn't have to change their behavior. They surgery, fine, they go to sleep and they wake up, but a pill, you just take a pill once a day. But changing lifestyle is asking the patient to look at the way they live, and it's a bigger ask. But sadly, in my opinion, the major chronic diseases that you and I and all of our audience are facing that will literally be our likely causes of death, these diseases don't really respond to a pill or surgery. In other words, to your point, like with type 2 diabetes, we can give insulin and we can keep the patient from dying from hyperglycemia immediately, but keeping the patient on type 2 diabetes on insulin for the lifetime actually makes the complications worse. And similarly, with heart disease, putting a stent in for a heart attack to open up the blood vessels, which is what, statistically you and I would get if we went in now. It may save our lives immediately, but it doesn't change our lifespan or improve our chances of dying later on. And it doesn't do anything to reverse the underlying cardiovascular disease, the atherosclerosis. And the amazing thing that just blew my mind was that diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, mental illness, hypertension, all of these seem to have a common basis in metabolic health, which is controlled by our lifestyle. So the same lifestyle things that will lower my chances of getting diabetes are also going to improve my chances against Alzheimer's disease, and it's going to make my hypertension better. And it's
It is a
all,
crazy, crazy thing because when we look at the physiology of insulin resistance or hyperinsulinemia, all the things that happen with that, and all the pills like hypertension, erectile dysfunction, polycystic ovary disease, all you go up through the whole list. And we say, well, let's throw a pill at each thing, or we could try to fix that insulin problem and see what happens, right? So 90% of the time we're seeing people's insulin come down, their blood pressure gets better. There's always outliers. But for the general rule, you go, okay, it's not going to hurt you to get that insulin down, or to start exercising if you're not, or to not be stressed and worry about watching the news all day long and thinking the world's going to end tomorrow. All these things have a huge impact, and it's surprising. I was reading that they're saying 80% of primary care visits are stress related, like some kind of stress or lifestyle stuff. And you go, wow, that's something that would put us out of business if people started being healthier and like not stressing so much.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing that really it continues, there continue to be surprises in this. The more I learn about it, the more I'm just like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. It's like the particular work with Chris Palmer and Georgia Ede on mental health, and the idea that metabolic unhealth driven by lifestyles, particularly junk food, which is high carb, high seed oils, junk food, for some patients actually contributes or makes them mentally ill, or drives their mental illness, full on schizophrenia, manic depressive disorder. And by switching their diet, their mental illness actually goes away for some patients, not everybody, but some. And to the point that they're out of the hospital and they're off all meds,
Yeah, it's amazing. And that was one thing I love it. I know we talked about in the other podcast. Tro and I started noticing our patients are happier. They're coming in, they're singing, they're like a different person. It wasn't just because of the weight loss and all that, but a lot of them would say, oh my gosh, great, my diabetes got better, but my mood, I'm laughing, I'm enjoying my neighbors. And we started talking about this. And doctors are saying we should have our license revoked for talking about food having any effect on mood, like at all. You go, it
wow.
has nothing to do with it. It's like, well, you take a little kid and you give him get him all hopped up on sugar and see how he is when he gets home to, when grandma and grandpa take him out to Disneyland for the day and they're having meltdowns because they're tired. And you start looking at that and we see that when people are doing better lifestyle, I mean, these things we look at and we say, okay, if you're drinking too much, for instance, or eating too many cookies, like why? And usually it's because you're stressed and tense, and that's your relief in life. Like I have a hard day, and my boss is a jerk. So at least when I go home, I can have some ice cream to relax my nerves, or I can have a drink and have my vodka tonight. And it's so amazing that when people are saying, "Hey, let's go for a walk instead. Let's go do something different," how much better they do. I have a guy, as a matter of fact, I have a guy he lost 26 pounds, and the only change he made was he would come home from work. His wife would always make dinner. He would sit there and eat chips and salsa, or he would snack and have a drink, a couple glasses of wine before dinner. And he said, you know what? Maybe I'll just go for. He goes, I just went for a walk. He said, I didn't even strain myself at all. I just go say hi to the neighbor. How are your kids? And go talk to them. And so he was social and got out for half an hour, 45 minutes, and he lost over 20 pounds just doing that alone. It's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, it's the drivers of all these things are so fascinating. The addictions that we all have, both minor and major, to things in our lifestyle, including food. It's no surprise that Alcoholics Anonymous meetings oftentimes include a bowl of candy in the middle, and people substitute one addiction for the other one, the tobacco or alcohol in that case for the candy, or smokers will take candy. And it's just we have to be careful which addictions we substitute for, and not take something worse at all. But it's amazing how we're driven by so many things. And it goes back to our childhood trauma, our personalities, all the things that make us who we are, also drive our susceptibility to junk food, or the resistance to lifestyle things.
Yeah, when we were having this debate, actually, funny enough, I got a letter from a Catholic priest who runs an alcohol rehab, like basically for people in the church. And he wrote me a letter. He goes, Doc, you're 100% right. And I said, and so he goes to this whole letter and he gave me stats. It's amazing. I haven't scanned in actually because it was so amazing. But he says in one group, we had them on a low carb ketogenic type diet. We didn't have donuts at the meet. The other one, they had donuts and cookies and whatever there, and punch or whatever. And he said massive difference in recidivism rate between the two groups. He said, I have it all documented. It's all there. He said, it's amazing. He said, we're changing our entire program because we're seeing better outcomes in people who, because that sugar, you get a little sugar, then you want a little bit more, or you get a little, no one. And that's the one thing too that's come up a lot in our discussions is this whole idea of everything in moderation. Okay, well, if you're alcoholic, you can't moderate alcohol. That's by definition, right? You can't just have one drink and I'm done. But they want people to have one cookie and be done. But some people, they get that dopamine rush and they want more and more and more. Or having that cookie, it says, okay, now I want a beer. Or even more frequently, and what we see all the time is we'll have patients doing great. And then all of a sudden, I know what happened. They go to happy hour and they have a couple of drinks. They go, you know what, forget it. Let's take the weekend off and we'll get back on Monday. And you can see their sugar's crazy all weekend after happy hour. You lower your inhibitions and you go, I shouldn't have that. Okay, forget it. I'm going to have it.
Yeah, the whole idea of I think Tim Ferriss popularized the idea of cheat days, where you just sort of like let everything blow out. And I, for some people it may be necessary to do that but to your point, once you once you start going down that road, it could be a slippery slope.
Yeah, and for a lot of people who have true addiction issues, then that's one thing. And so some people, as a matter of fact, just yesterday, a guy goes, he's new to me, and he said, if I'm fasting or I don't eat any, he goes, it's so easy, I don't crave sugar at all. But if I have a little bit of sugar, I want it all night. He goes, it's on my brain all the time. He's like, yeah, that's how it works, a lot of times.
That's what I like about fasting, intermittent fasting, just small intervals during the day. Well, first of all, it makes me feel better. Like you were saying, it makes my mind clearer. I don't get brain fog. I have more time because I'm not eating breakfast or lunch. More time, and I have more money because I'm not, buying food. Although you buy more of a little bit bigger dinner, but um, it's just, yeah, it's interesting how that can all those things can happen. But fasting I think is a really powerful tool for everyone. And it also will drive some metabolic health by moving people into ketosis a little bit and all. And it doesn't cost anything, and it's actually saves you time and money.
Yeah, and that's why it's funny because Jason Fung came out with all these fasting regimen and the fasting method and all that, and people thought it was crazy because they go, it's just calorie restriction. But when you look at it, I mean, the one thing I think we're all coming back to the whole role of the mitochondria, right? The energy centers, and they do other stuff too, like sex hormones and all these other things we want. But if they're constantly overstressed, right? If they're constantly overstressed, they start throwing out, free radicals, and we get oxidative damage and aging and all these kind of things. So the whole idea is saying, okay, let's not overwhelm these poor guys and throw a bunch of raw materials at them all day long. Let them rest up a little bit, get ready for when we need them.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously, you have tremendous experience in this, expert in this field. Why do you think there's so much resistance to a a metabolically healthy diet that has been proven in many patients who have seizures? It will reverse seizures. In mental health, it will reverse some psychiatric conditions. It will lower the risk for Alzheimer's disease, and even with people with Alzheimer's disease will reverse their mental fog in some of them, not all of them. But and all these other dramatic effects, lowering blood pressure, da 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 da. why is there why is there so much resistance to this metabolically healthy diet, which is basically no junk foods? And junk foods means carbs and seed oils and for some people grains also. Why wouldn't everyone go, heck, yeah, I'll try it? It doesn't, it's what's the harm? What's the pushback, do you think?
Well, there's so much pushback, man, and I get it, because all of us were, at least I was raised and I gained all my weight with Entenmann's cakes because they said you could eat all that because it's non-fat. So we were all raised on this low fat, non-fat. We have skim milk. We have, you're taking fat out of everything, then you replace it with carbohydrates. So the problem is even now, just yesterday I had this discussion. Get this, just yesterday we had this discussion. New patient, came to me and he said he got diagnosed with diabetes about 4 months ago, and that's a dream for us because we can reverse that pretty quickly, right? It's not like he's had it for 40 years, but he's been pre-diabetic for a long. Like you look at his labs, you go, oh my gosh! Like everyone knew it was his A1C kept going up and up and up. It was a 6.4. His doctor goes, yeah, don't worry till you get diabetes. You're fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Well, of course, you're driving towards the cliff, and then he ends up getting diabetes. But he went to diabetes education, and they told him, yeah, you need to eat 60 grams of carbs with each meal, and you need to eat 6 times a day. And you're like, okay, let's look at how many carbs that is. That's like ridiculous. That's worse than the standard American diet. Like, really? That's what they told you? And he goes, yeah. And him and his wife goes, yeah, that's what they told us. And so we had this discussion about how low carb can you go? Well, if your sugar's 300, you don't really need more sugar in that system. But I think that's the thing is when you look at it, you look at, we can get into regulatory capture and, who's funding the ADA and all these kind of things. And you look and you go, oh my gosh, like big foods on one side saying, yeah, eat whatever you want. And we got insulin. And we even see, and doc, you see the endocrinologists a lot of times. They go, you know what, you're type 1 kid, no problem. Eat whatever you want. You don't have to restrict anything. And we'll just give you insulin all the time. And then we have, for the first time in life, that we have type 1 diabetics being obese. Classically, type 1s were skinny and frail and, couldn't do anything. But now all of a sudden we say, yeah, just do whatever you want and we can control with the med. And I think that's what we're seeing. Oh, you like cookies and donuts? Just eat the cookies and donuts and we'll give you a statin drug and you don't have to, your heart will be protected, right? This kind of mindset. Or we'll shoot you with this Ozempic. We can shoot you with the drug and then you can eat whatever you want, And so that's the mindset we've got into that it's, and the thing is, it's so hard because people are like, I can eat red meat. Like this guy yesterday, he's of German heritage. He goes, I love herring, I love sardines, and they told me not to eat it because there's so much fat in it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, right? Sugar's your problem. So, anyways, these kind of things. But I think, and the other thing that's very interesting to me too is a lot of the doctors I've seen, especially more of the vegan docs, they'll say continuous glucose monitors aren't helpful. It's malpractice to give it to you if you're not a diabetic. Well, we're 94 or 96% of us are going to get diabetes at some point if we don't stop. We're not metabolically healthy. But when people can see it, just yesterday I had a lady, she's killing it. All of a sudden, boom, her sugars went crazy one day. I go, what happened? Did you have like what? And she said, we went for sushi. And I thought it was super healthy. And I thought, oh, I could eat sushi. That's healthy. And then her sugars went crazy high. The highest of, she had candy one day and it didn't go as high as the sushi did. So it's things like that where we think like, and that's what I thought for so many years. Like, oh, I'll just go have sushi. That's super healthy. And you don't realize if you're metabolically sick, it's a disaster.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's huge in the U.S. I think it's this summer when the CGMs are going to be available without prescription, like they are in England already. But what do you think the effects of that's going to be?
It's going to be a mixed thing, I think. It depends whose hands it's in, really, because I've seen a lot of docs who are using CGMs, and what they're doing is they go, your sugar goes high at 2 o'clock when you eat lunch at dinner time, and then when you eat your snack at night. So those are times you have to take extra medicines to bring your sugars down, right? Instead of saying, hey, don't eat as much sugar during those meals, and you won't need it in medicine. So I think if we understand and we can educate doctors, and I think part of it is there's a lack of education, and so doctors, myself included, for years and years, because the stuff you taught me in medical school, right? I was just looking at the sugars. I never considered insulin at all. I never thought about, hey, once if your insulin is high, and then I started looking at Ivor Cummins and some other people taught me that, and I started looking at high insulin levels, and lo and behold, all these people with high insulin levels are having strokes, early coronary disease, bypass surgeries, amputations, diabetes complications, and all these things. You go, oh my gosh! Like, and so some of the studies they're basing their recommendations on were based on drug management. Like you said, yes, you could take insulin; it will lower your sugars, and your sugars will look great, but you die earlier, right? So when you start saying, well, instead of taking insulin all the time, why don't we try to get people off? And when I started thinking that way, some of my partners, one being an endocrinologist, said that's really dangerous thinking. Why is that? Well, because they can get low sugars from the insulin. Well, stop the insulin. They won't get low sugars. You don't get low sugars by not eating sugar. It just doesn't happen unless you're drinking a bunch of alcohol at night, right? So, when you see the physiology and you start understanding, and it's common sense, like what we were taught, every patient, every diabetic admitted to the hospital when I was in residency, every single one, they put them on a sliding scale insulin, and they took them off all their oral meds. So we converted them from being non-insulin dependent. By the time they leave the hospital, they go, yeah, you just be on insulin now, because they could monitor that. Go, your sugar's 300, you could take X number of units. You just memorize this formula, right? And everyone just wrote it down there, and this is what we do. And no one said, wait a minute, why are we giving him, like so many times I would get consulted by the trauma guys. And I go, we need a medicine consult because this patient's sugars are like 400, 500. I'm like, what do you give them in their veins? D5W. Like we're giving them sugar water. I go, why don't we stop the sugar water and see what the sugars do? Just give them saline. They don't need sugar. Their sugar's high. Why are you giving them more sugar? You know what I mean? But the mind says like that's just what we do. We stamp and we go, that's what we I don't think. I just do what we were taught, right? Like exactly to your point.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think it's going to take? Are people just going to a generation going to have to die off for the beliefs to change? Because even today, they're not changing in medical school. I mean, the sad part, most of the lies I taught in medical school that I taught in medical are still being taught today. And
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
and let's talk about that. Like, okay, grand rounds. You go to USC, you go to my residency. Who's paying for grand rounds?
right, right. Yeah, no, exactly. The same people who's buying the donuts for the the break there and all. It's amazing how political this has been and how much these interests drive things. I mean, you mentioned the dietitians and their organization being funded heavily by you go to my mom was a dietitian, so full disclosure, but you go to a dietitian's meeting today and there's Coca-Cola as a sponsor, there's things which
You got
you
chips and
know
crackers and cakes and all that, and you go, wait a minute. Like Tro took a picture at the obesity week, and it was ridiculous.
yes.
It was just in the doctor's lounge. You're like, oh my gosh! Like if you're trying to kill people, that's what you eat, right?
What do you think has to change then for for all of us to move the needle on this? Because people are being harmed. I mean, type 2 diabetic. I have a friend who's type 2 diabetic. Her husband, he has a Coke every night because he was told he can just quote cover it with insulin. But he's busy next week because he's going to get his toes amputated,
Yeah.
and then and his kidneys are not as good as they used to be, and it's just a matter of time doing dialysis. But he still has that Coke, and he still covers it with insulin. That's what he's being taught.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing. I mean, I think there's going to have to be a culture change, and the other thing is really, I think it's who's doing the funding. Like these studies, you look at someone who just did this huge study saying, well, maybe low carb's not great. Oh, who sponsored? General Mills. Oh, okay, like right. And if you don't get the right outcome, you don't get more research grants. So we get into these big problems where there's a massive conflict of interest, and I think it's a lack. It's a multifactorial, right? Because one thing is when I was working 18-hour days, you come in and talk to me about something that Dr. Oz is talking about. It's like I really don't have time for that. I'm not looking at these crazy oak bark or whatever. You know what I mean? These kind of crazy stuff. You go, we'll just give medicines. And so part of it's the arrogance of Western medicine that we think we know. You and I have looked more and you go, what about this crazy gut microbiome thing? And you start looking and go, oh my gosh. Like, and even if we look at proton pump inhibitors, which three-quarters of our country's on now from acid, like, okay, why do we have acid reflux? What happens if we let the acid come up? What happens? So there's a mindset that goes, too much stomach acid causes this problem. We have to decrease the stomach acid, right? And you realize H. pylori kills off your cells that can make stomach acid so that you can't kill the H. pylori, right? And you go, okay, then how do we overcome that? And there's so many natural approaches that we can do just to get people feeling better instead of being on a lifelong, say, how many patients, like so many patients I talk to, it's ridiculous. They're on a proton pump inhibitor. I go, how's your, what kind of symptoms are you having? Like I did like 8 years ago when I was going through my divorce, but no one ever tried to take you off it. No, once you're on it, they just keep you on it for the rest of your life, right? And that's perfect for pharma because they have a lifelong customer.
Yeah, yeah, and it's sort of a balance, like you say. Physicians are busy; they've had their training, but they have walls against outside information. Somebody says, "Hey, I just listened to a podcast, and they said that da 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 da." They're going to go, "No, I've got to get it done." But somehow, I mean, the only reason, like I said, the only reason I
What
was
do you
open
think,
to
Doc? What
it.
do you think is the solution to all this? Obviously, your book in education. Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to change until I was forced to try to save my life when I got those diseases. And otherwise, I wouldn't have paid attention. I would have kept on doing what I was doing and following the conventional wisdom, which sadly for these chronic diseases is wrong. I mean, I guess the one point I want to be clear is and I'm sure you agree with me, Western medicine is amazing. It's unequaled. For if I get in a car accident, I want to go to the hospital. I want a blood transfusion. I want my bones set. I don't want lifestyle tips then. Although even then, lifestyle will make me respond better to the healing. But there are acute things that modern medicine does, many infectious disease things that modern medicine is based on. And I think the problem is that today we've taken care of infectious disease. We handle trauma very well, but now we have these growing chronic diseases that are basically exploding in unprecedented numbers as never before seen in history, even corrected for population of obesity, diabetes, and all the other ones. And
Autoimmune disease in younger and younger people, right?
yeah, yeah, and we modern medicine tries to throw the same techniques at them, pills and surgery, and for those things it doesn't work, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
If
the
you get shot,
challenge.
take me to LA County USC. These guys are the best in the world at this stuff. Right. So there's definite things, but the problem now, and this is why I was starting to burn out on my old practice, was everyone was a train wreck when they came in. Everyone was a train wreck. Their sugars are crazy, so I'm trying to manage, like it's a disaster situation. Like the dam is leaking everywhere, and you're trying to plug as many holes you can as quickly as you can. Then you get on to the next one you have to fix, and the next one you have to fix. We think once if we really do focus on preventive medicine, if we really do focus on that and say, look, we're going to pay doctors to do education, we're going to pay you to do things, and that's why in the standard model, I just couldn't. It wasn't then. It was just not a good fit for me because I want to sit there for an hour and help my patient who's going to get diabetes to prevent it, and I get job satisfaction from that. And I know I'm saving the system money down the road because they're not going to need amputations, all this stuff that we're talking about, these disasters, because none of us like to see that diabetic foot ulcer that we know is going to end in an amputation that we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and then we just go, let's just amputate it because it's too much work. We can't like it's caught, it's you're getting your Una boots and your legs wrapped. And I think the more we've been around, we've seen those kind of disasters. That gosh darn it, if we could have intervened 10 years ago on this poor patient, they wouldn't be in this situation right now. They'd be out playing golf or doing something fun rather than going to doctor's appointments every day.
Yeah, no, that's such an important point. I think all of our thinking, all of us as patients in this system, our thinking needs to change. That right now, patients think, when my HA1C hits 6.5, I'm a diabetic, and before that, I'm not. Might be a little pre-diabetic for a little in there, but similarly, when the doctor when I can't find my keys anymore and don't recognize my wife, they tell me I've got Alzheimer's disease, and before that, I didn't. Well, almost all these chronic diseases are present years and decades beforehand, and if we wait for the medical system to diagnose them, we're really behind the eight ball. And like you say, we're all on the path to with type 2 diabetes with our HbA1c. Many, if not most of us, are, if we live long enough, will be facing that if we don't dive something else first. So I think this metabolically healthy lifestyle is something that everyone should embrace, because we're all at risk to varying degrees for all these chronic diseases. And amazing thing, it's going to improve our chances for every single one of them. And it's not the cure necessarily for everything, but it will improve our chances. And we certainly want to look at other toxins, lead, mercury, mold, and stuff like that. But assuming we have that in order, the lifestyle is so important, but it's just the message isn't getting out there.
Yeah, and I think who's gonna? The problem is giving grand rounds of telling people to watch their stress and all that kind of stuff. It's hard. As a perfect example, this patient been struggling with his weight. He's going to the doctor, and I happen to work with the doctor. He's one of the worst doctors I've ever worked with, and a bad attitude, caused trouble everywhere. No one. It's just like a difficult person. So anyways, this poor patient goes, look, my sugars are getting worse and worse, and all he's doing is throwing drugs at it. And I asked him about lifestyle. He said, doesn't work. He goes, here's your options. And then when the patient came to me, he had a fasting insulin that was like, 42 or something. It should be less than 5, less than 10 for sure, and less than 5. Your insulin's 42 and your A1C is at 6.4. I go, you have diabetes. Like it's unsustainable what you're doing. And he said, and I said, but I'm shocked that he actually got an insulin. I'm impressed. He said, I argued with him for half an hour to get an insulin drawn because he refused to do it. And then he goes, why do you want it? And he goes, I think I'm in a consult with this one doctor one time. He goes, oh, that guy's a quack. He talks about lifestyle. He's not, he said, then he called him back. He goes, okay, I'm going to tell you what. I could probably get a Ozempic approved for you, or I could get you a gastric bypass. Which of those do you want to do? And I can take care of you. And so the guys came
Wow.
in. He's already lost 21 pounds and he's dropped his insulin down and he's feeling great. He's like, oh my gosh, for years, no one told me this. No one talked to me ever about lifestyle, ever. And if I asked, they would get offended.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I literally, when I got my 4 diseases, I went to doctors and was given the best advice at the time, which was to start prescription drugs. And I asked about lifestyle. He said, and I was told similar to what you said. Yeah, you can do it, but hey,
Doesn't
you're
work.
going to be on these drugs for the rest of your life, so get used to it. And they also implied that these drugs would control the disease. I take these drugs, my blood pressure would go down. End of story. Everything's under control. When actually it's not. There's still processes going on in the endothelial glycocalyx. Even though the blood pressure may be coming down, there are metabolic things that are happening that aren't controlled. It's just the canary in the coal mine now is silenced, and I don't worry about it anymore, but it continues to progress, and it may not come out as high blood pressure, may come out as Alzheimer's disease. It may come out as, any number of the things we've talked about.
Autoimmune disease,
But that's,
infections, recurrent urinary infection, whatever, those kind of things. And you go, okay, why are we having that? And I think to answer your question, I think what we've done in medicine is we've lost our ability to critically think. We say, well, here's a protocol we follow. You have high blood pressure. Here's drug one, then drug two, then add drug three. This one interacts here. These two can be synergistic. Instead of saying, okay, why don't we check your insulin, see where it's at? Right. If you have high blood pressure and your insulin's through the roof, 90% of the time, if we get that corrected, we could fix that problem. And guess what? Your mood gets better and your sugars get better. Everything else gets better along the way. And so I think it's a mindset of, um, it's funny because I have patients, if they go in and they say, oh, I'm doing a ketogenic diet, the doctor freaks out, says you're going to die in a week. But if they say I'm doing a modified Mediterranean diet, which is the same thing as the ketogenic diet, they're just cutting out the rice and the bread. They go, great, that's perfect. That's what you want to do, right? And so it's really a wild time. But I think really what we're facing is tons of doctors are burned out. They don't even. I have people that have joined my practice, and I'm like, what happened with your old doctor? So I would call like 6 times, no one would call me back. I was just with a friend last night. We were talking about it, and his mom, because she's in her 90s, she said doctors will not call me back. Her feet are swollen, she can't breathe, and like they go take her to the emergency room. She's old. What do you
yeah,
wants to do? That type of he goes, they have such that attitude, or you know, keep giving her
yeah,
sedation, give her Xanax, and she had a urinary infection, and she was acting out because she had a urinary. Like no one checked a urine on her. They just said, "Oh, give her Xanax, triple her." They gave her 3 Xanax pills to calm her nerves, but she was agitated from a urinary infection. Like treat the urinary infection, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, I think we were talking a little off camera about a new group that I'm involved with that is a socioeconomically challenged population. They're Medicare, Medicaid patients. Um, and we've been given the opportunity to help manage their care, so we can spend money on whatever we want: red light therapy, massage, movie theater tickets. We can incentivize them anyway. But what we're facing is the doctors, to your point, that are dealing with them now they're compensated at a very low rate. They have maybe 5 minutes with a patient, and what they do in that 5 minutes, they basically, the vital signs are taken and they refill the prescriptions and move on. So we're thinking, if we're going to move the needle on the health of this population, it's got to be it may not be with the doctors, like you say, it may not be re-educating these doctors because they're burned out, and we want to help the doctors as much as we can, but we realize the limits there. So we're looking at, some of the things you've been doing, like with coaches and nurse practitioners and community, and building it outside of the actual medical interaction there, just because it's so dysfunctional now, and it's very, very hard to change that. So we'll see how it goes. Stay tuned, and I appreciate you're gonna help us with this, and I'm really looking forward to
Yeah,
collaborating
I
on
mean,
it.
I love it because then you see huge benefits. Because I'm telling you, the common thinking is those communities don't care about their health. Just throw them a pill, and if you talk to the like, yeah, I told you what I did with these women up in Vacaville, and you just educate them and show them and let them see a continuous glucose monitor and talk to them about, hey, let's run through one of them, and they all learn. They were some of my brightest patients with the best results because they were in. They go, oh my gosh, I didn't know tortillas did that. I didn't know that eating rice with every meal was going to be a problem. When we cut it out, look at my show, and they're showing each other. And the other important thing that I think we're all trying to tap into is this sense of community. Like people listening to this have a sense of community. They're low carb, or they're listening to, they want to get healthier. So, for me, and that's why when I left the system was 90% of my patients really didn't want to change what they were doing. So I was frustrated by that 90%. The 10% I could help were just killing it when they made these changes. So I was like, man, if I could only have those 10% of people, and it would be amazing. Now in my practice, these are people who say, my health is important to me. I'm going to pay you guys, make me healthy, help me learn, educate me, right? Because people want to know. They go, what's the right thing to do? This person says this, the diabetes educator says this, I need 60 grams of carbs with each meal and my sugars go higher. And so you go, okay, how do we build a team to have educators who say, look, here, we're going to do low carb, here's how we're going to manage it. And I think Fat Fiction, that movie, did a great job of showing, look, if we change these things, if you go on that diet and this one, look at your continuous glucose monitor. You don't need my opinion anymore. Those are facts there. Those are real numbers. So when people see it, they realize, oh, if I eat a certain thing, my sugars come down and I don't need as much medicine. Because no one really wants to be on tons of medicines, but they just don't want to change the lifestyle. Because they go, if I take
Yeah.
this insulin, then I don't have to stop eating cookies, right? Instead of saying, hey, if I stop eating cookies, I don't have to take the insulin. And that's the mindset. And I think, to answer your earlier question, I think when the patient is motivated and they say, look, I want to feel better. I don't want to be, no one takes me on a hike because I can't walk up a hill. I'm exhausted all the time. So what steps can we do? Because the reality is, one of the biggest factors for longevity is muscle mass, right? The more mass we have, the more metabolically healthy we are. But a lot of people, I don't want to exercise, right? But I want to have the benefits of exercise without actually having to go get sweaty.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point about motivation, and the motivated patient can accomplish a lot, and that's what this the challenge we're having with this new population of patients. They they have a lot of challenges, socioeconomically and other things, and we're finding that everyone wants to be healthy, right? Nobody doesn't want to be healthy, but in the scheme of things, their health is not number one. They want to get their kids in school, they want to find a job. Health is
And you
on
got
the
to pay
list.
rent, you got stuff, you got
Yeah,
conflict at home, all these things. Yeah, it's not easy for sure.
yeah, health is not number one. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can, we're talking to Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation, about the motivators for our behaviors and habits and things that, and the motivator, it may not be, we may not be able to motivate them with the idea of health, but we can motivate them with other things, like you say, community, and all those sorts of things, or movie theater tickets, or however we design the system. But as long as we make them healthier, that's important. The other interesting thing about this population versus, let's say, a concierge medical practice where everyone is optimized and fine-tuned and they're motivated and they want to do everything. There's a great Peter Diamandis is a friend. He's a guy who does he does these X Prize things. He does like they do different things, but his latest announcement is a longevity X Prize. It's to stimulate research in longevity. It's like $100 million prize, and it's for whoever can take a population and actually lower their biological age, reverse their age or lower it in several key areas. But the point is, many groups are assembling to address this and enter the challenge, and they're working with highly motivated, like Brian Johnson and stuff, people that are optimizing that are already super tweaked for longevity. The problem is with those people, you're not going to be able to move the needle much because
Yeah,
they've
exactly right.
already.
Exactly
So
right. Yeah.
we have a team together that we're working on, and we're going to be working with our new population. And these people, they haven't optimized, most of them, haven't had the opportunity to have access to good medical care or understanding even good lifestyle. And so we're excited that we're going to be able to move the needle a lot. Whether we win the X Prize or not doesn't matter, but it's important. The great thing about this population is that I think we'll be able to help them a lot more than we might be able to help a wealthy concierge population, which
Yeah, they're
which
just
is good
wondering like
too. There's nothing wrong with
how do I get my
that.
supplements right, and what we're talking about, and that this is why what you're doing is such a huge impact, is if you have someone who's coming in, they're drinking 4 sodas a day and eating tortillas and chips and crackers, and like you're like, oh, I'm gonna look like a genius in a few weeks, right? If we can work on you and get you off that, you're gonna see massive improvements. But if someone's eating, healthy diet already, it's like, okay, we have, it's gonna be more work to tweak that, right? But when I hear someone say, yeah, oh, I eat cookies 4 times a day, it's like, oh, okay, great. Because if we can change a little few things, it's going to make a massive difference, right? Right, really quickly. And those are the people that you hear like, oh, I lost 30 pounds in a week. Well, you really didn't. Is you lowered your insulin from being at 60 down to 12 or 15, in that short time. And you peed out a lot of salt water. But you, you're not carrying all that. It is weight, but it's not fat weight necessarily. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's
Yeah, that's a
amazing.
good
That's why I'm
point.
excited. And I think what would be a great approach for what you're doing is get some Zoom meetings and have 50 or 100 patients together and everyone like telling their story. I'm telling you the power. I just this last week on Wednesday we did a Zoom meeting and people are there and we'll go, so what's on people's minds and no one says anything. I'm like, so what do you guys want to talk about? Like we'll have 20, 30, 40 people on there maybe. And then this one guy said, you know what? I didn't want to be here tonight. I've been eating cookies and I've been blowing it. It's the worst I've done ever. And like all these people jumped. Like, I don't have to say anything. All these patients say, oh, you know what? I was doing that too. You know what I did? I did this. And people can help each other. And you get that group of motivated people and supportive. I'd never hear negativity. And everyone wants a support and go, oh my gosh. Or they'll be talking, go, oh, Tom, oh my gosh, how much weight? You look fantastic. What are you doing? Like, oh yeah, I've been walking more. So when you hear that positive feedback, so many of us were doing stuff and no one says anything. So you go, I clean the house every day and no one notices. But when someone says, oh my gosh, things I noticed you clean the house, just being positive like that, there's a lot to that. And building a community when people say, yeah, let's, instead of going to happy hour every night, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk together and talk. Things like that people build this healthier lifestyle, and it's amazing what you can accomplish. So I'm excited about what you're doing, and I know there's great companies and great people out there who can help you along the way too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're open to, we want any early stage company or more mature company that has technology or health coaching, anything that wants to apply to this population, where we want to work with them. And if it makes people healthier, we're all for it. And we
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
exciting
any.
work you're doing. I'm
Yeah.
excited about that for you. That's really, really good. So what do you think is the biggest surprise to you now? Like the stuff you think about that like in med school or in your early career that you would say that's crazy, and then all of a sudden you go, man, there's something to that. Are there any like big, like where was a big eye opener for you?
Well, just, I mean, what we've been talking about all along is that all these chronic diseases, which I thought and many of my colleagues still feel are very different diseases. I had gout, and then I had hypertension, and then I had prediabetes. And they said, well, these are completely unrelated disease. Arthritis is not related to hypertension, get over it. But actually they are. They all have a metabolic basis with glucose and fructose metabolism, and nitric oxide and urate, and they're all tied together. And the amazing thing is, with these lifestyle modifications, you improve your chances. And in my case, I was able to go off medications for all those diseases just by changing the lifestyle. And the great thing about lifestyle, I always say this, is it returns agency to me as a patient. I'm in charge now, because every morning with lifestyle, when I get up in the morning, I can decide what my life is going to be for the day. You know, whether I exercise, whether I walk, whether I, you know, go to the bar, or, you know, go to what, you know, whatever I do, whatever I eat, it's a new day and I get to choose it. So it's hopefully a message of empowerment for all of us, that we could take charge of our lives. And doctors are important. You know, you're great, I'm great, we all add value, but I think the patient is more important for these things about prevention and lifestyle, because obviously that's what drives it. Doctors can only do so much.
Yeah, and I think that is a, for me, sitting down talking to Ben Bickman, that's why I respect him so much. And he goes, "Look, here's 5 things you could do." And I'm looking at that list going, "Okay, I'm sleeping 4 hours a night and I'm working 12, 16-hour days every day." I'm like, this is not good. Like if I want to have longevity, I cannot continue this for the next 20 years. It's not going to help me. So you say, well, if we really do care about these things, and the problem is so many doctors are in that situation because we all know these guys, and they're up like, they sacrifice personal relationship, they sacrifice exercise, they've sacrificed so much. So when you say these things are critically important, they listen and go, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that right now because there's nothing I can do about it. I'm in this, I work for the man here, a big organization. And so that's a thing too. And I think for what you're doing too, you could draw a lot of doctors in, and this is what Tro and I have been talking about. A lot of these young docs, like starting out and having to start your own practice and do it, it's like it's daunting, especially when you have $300,000 in med school loans paying USC, right? So it's a really a daunting. But if you say, hey, look, we can arrange patients who are like-minded, and we can work on this metabolic and give you job satisfaction, and let you go home and have a life, because really, so many in medicine, they've traded their life for medicine. Like they've sacrificed their life for medicine, and they see their patients getting sicker and sicker, and they don't know what to do, right? They don't know what to do. Like, how do I get out of this situation? And finances are an issue. So there's so many things. And plus, if you're getting paid by a big system and you say, I don't think we're doing this right, they say, you know what, get out of here. We'll bring someone else. We can bring in 30 doctors to replace you. You're just a cog in the
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah, it's so many myths. I mean, we probably both were doing this, but I believe that, you know, taking call was a you know, a badge of honor. And the more I carried the beeper and the longer I stayed up, the tougher I was, and I was being better. And I didn't realize that I was harming myself and potentially harming my patients by it. And, you know, there's so many things like this, that so many misconceptions that we need to be aware of. Sleep is really important, and despite what Elon Musk says, most people, in my opinion, need about 8 hours of sleep. You know, and it's a very, very sharp curve for health on either side of it. And if you're, you know, if you much less than that or much more than that, and bad things happen to your body.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And the amazing thing about it, it's not that we're just saying we think this is the best. You start looking at studies and data, and you say, "Oh my gosh, there's tons of data on these things. There's tons of data on sleep deprivation and insulin resistance." And so when I started looking at that, I was like, "Oh, no wonder." Because a lot of people are saying, "Well, I'm eating a ketogenic diet, so I'm fine." Yeah, but you're fighting with your wife every day, and you're stressed out, and you're drinking, a gallon of vodka every night, and you're taking 6 cups of coffee to get going in the morning. And you start realizing like dopamine nation, we need these hits. How do we get this dopamine rush? And I think, a lot of times people are disengaged on their cell phones. They're not, a buddy of mine at the gym yesterday was telling me, he said he was with his grandkids and they were at the beach and it's a beautiful day. He goes, "Hey, let's go body surfing." And he said they're on their iPads going, "Oh yeah, maybe later." Right? You just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
let's go do something. Then
No,
there's like, "Oh
definitely.
no, we're okay. We'll just, we're into our video games." So it's a hard thing. There's so many factors. And I think also this disconnection we have as people, like, the last few years have been that where a lot of people were socially isolated. And I saw my seniors just cave like crazy, like mental functioning dropping, you know, just no motivation to do stuff because they were just sitting in the room by themselves all day watching the news thinking they're going to die. And the amount of effect it had on them was dramatic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the effect of mindset is so powerful. That was the other wake up call. And you know, if someone turns 60 and they're thinking, "Wow, I'm going to live another 40 years. What does that look like? And why do I want to live another 40 years just to live another 40 years?" And I think part of the answer is, if we can continue to evolve emotionally, mentally, and not make the mistakes in the next 40 years that we made in the first 60 years with our spouses, our children, our family, our friends, and just become, better people and more mentally, grow on that, the wisdom of the elders, and continue to evolve, then I think that's the key. And having purpose, I mean, most people retire and then they die in a couple of years, and
One,
there's
you look at who they are. They're the our identities and our occupation. So a lot of doctors die within a couple of years or a year or two. They work till they die, basically. Police
yeah,
officers,
yeah,
firemen. Like last stat I saw was like police would die within 5 years of retirement generally. And you go, oh my gosh, that is because of all those nights of being up all night, stress, cortisol, all these poor habits, eating donuts and coffee and all those kind of things to stay awake. And so you start realizing, yeah, I mean, who wants to work their whole life and then die? You want to be able to say, hey, I want to enjoy it and go do stuff and contribute. I have, like, one of my
yeah.
patients, I'm going to Guatemala in a couple of days for a medical trip, and one of my patients found out about it. She brought me this whole box of animals that she made out of socks and different things, and they're great. And I'm like, man, that's so, but like that took her effort and time, and so she knows these kids are gonna be so happy and blessed by that because they have nothing, and to have this little doll is gonna, like, make the year for some of these kids. But things like that where people are motivated, they have something that's driving them to learn or to educate or to learn how to paint, whatever it is, have some kind of a passion in life. So many people, I'll ask them, one of the first questions I'll ask people, like, to get a sense of them, I'll say, what do you do for fun? And I would say 90% of people look at me like, fun? I'm surviving. Are you kidding me? What do you mean? What do I do for fun? You know,
Wow,
I don't have time for that
wow.
because I got to take care of kids and I got this and I have, all these responsibilities. Like, wow, that's like, because if you go to other countries, they have fun times. They go play with the kids. They're on the beach. They go and do things. When you have a lower life stress, but that mind's always going. Even if you're not
Yeah,
stressed, is that I got to pay the bills next week. I got to be here. I got this responsibility. And so not just to shut down and do nothing sometimes is good medicine.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sense of purpose and is so valuable. Yeah.
Well, then I have to put you on the spot. What's life's best medicine for you, Doc? Like, what floats your boat? Gets you going when things are kind of tough? Where do you go to? How do you get your grounding and all that?
Well, the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and I'm right in the middle of it right now, and it's not always fun all the time, but I'm going through it, is I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old daughter, and they're teaching me things about myself that I never knew, and I'm trying to be the best dad I can with them. I'm going with my 12-year-old to Disneyland on Monday, Tuesday, and we're going to have a father-daughter day at Disneyland.
Awesome, awesome stuff, man.
but but yeah, connecting with children, with my children, for me is the best thing, and something completely unexpected.
Man, I'll be praying for you. 12 and a 15-year-old. Mine are 22 and 24 now. Yeah, I remember those days, man. Yeah, you got to take, and plus, plus you have when you have kids, you want to be able to go do stuff with them. So many people go, yeah, you guys go play and have fun, and I'm going to sit here and watch TV. I'll catch up with you later. And so being able to be healthy enough to go and do those things and not be so exhausted, but yeah, that's a lot. And then those things are so impactful. Even now, I'll sit down with my daughters and they'll go, "Remember, Dad, we had that date and we went over here and did this. We went to, Coronado and we went and walked on the beach. That was so great." And it's so important. And people, we don't appreciate enough how much of an impact we have on our kids with, by, things you teach them and life skills and all these things. What a huge thing going, just talking while you're in line waiting. I'm
Yeah,
glad it's you and not me,
absolutely.
man.
And with the honest to God, the revolution in longevity that's going on now, the new treatments, the new understanding of aging, which I never thought would be possible. I We're all going to be living longer than we thought, hopefully able to see our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids even, so think about what you want to do with all those extra years and make them count.
Yeah, enjoy it, have fun, laugh, enjoy it a little bit. Like, don't be so serious. So, how do people track you down, Doc?
Let's see. My website
Is your
is
book available yet, or is it coming out soon?
it's available for pre-order. It's coming out June 4th. Uh, but Yeah, so you can pre-order it now. If you want, you can go to my website and download a sample chapter, see if you like it or not, or get it, get it from your library eventually. My website is Robert Lufkin, Lufkin, MD.com. And I have links to social media and stuff on there also.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll have it all in the show. You sent that to me, so we'll have it in the show notes. So anyone just go and click on the show notes, lifesbestmedicine.com. It'll be on there or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And this will be a great, as a matter of fact, I'm leaving for Guatemala. I'm taking the doc with me to Guatemala, and not him, but his book. So I'll be reading that on the plane and when I get there and all that. And that this is a book you could take to your own doctor and say, hey, read this, doc. What do you think? Is this guy crazy or not? And I think the other thing is that now that we've been around a little bit longer, we have more credibility, that we've seen a lot of stuff, and you look at what works and doesn't. And so I think, having that broad foundation of knowledge and dealing with patients and seeing who does well and who's getting sick and who's dying, huge thing. This clinical experience thing is really, really critical. So we can't wait around for a randomized controlled trial of whether, laughing and having fun makes it. They're out there, but you might as well laugh and enjoy. Like, the thing with oxytocin, which is the feel good hormone when you fall in love and you're happy and you're relaxed and all that, get a massage, whatever. All these studies I read on oxytocin about how great it was, at the end they say, if pharma could only come up with a pill or a powder that will make your oxytocin go up. It's like, well, going to Disneyland with your daughter and having fun and laughing and doing silly stuff, that's going to raise it. You don't need a pill for that.
True. That's absolutely right.
Well, Doc, and I'm gonna make sure we put this on both podcasts, Life's Best Medicine. We'll get this right out, because I want a lot of people to hear it, because I love it, because I can have my patients go, go listen to Dr. Lufkin. You don't have to listen to me, and there's especially when there's so much great information out there, and Jason Fung did the forward to your book. I mean, all these great docs and great people were like, oh my gosh, like, it's amazing the impact you're going to have with this. So I'm excited about it. Are you going to do an audiobook, you think?
Yeah, actually, we Audible is doing it, and they've hired a voice actor to do it. It was a famous comedian, actually, so an impersonator. So we'll see if he can impersonate my voice. But
Oh,
anyway,
very cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I heard that. I've talked to several people, and they go, that was one of the most demanding things, is reading for Audible. It's hard. It's really challenging. I will never do that. Forget it. Yeah. If I have to read it, forget it. It's not going to happen. So that's awesome. Good. Congrats. So if you don't like to read, go on Audible. I would highly recommend. This is going to be good stuff. And Doc, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Brian. Have a great time on your upcoming trip. That's wonderful. Many blessings to you.
Oh, thank you. And survive Disneyland, man. If you can get through that, you're pretty durable.
She still won't go on Pirates of the Caribbean. It's too scary. So,
oh, really?
Maybe next year.
I know some of the rides. I mean, I've never been to California Adventure. I've never been there. One of these days,
it's
maybe.
Awesome. It's awesome. Yeah.
If I was a radiologist, I could afford to go, but I'm only an internist, All right. Hey, everyone. This is gold. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Think about longevity, think about these stuff. I know when we're 20 or 30, we don't think this way, but as we get older, we think, my back's creaky and my knees hurt and I'm grumpy all the time. And, we can make those changes. You can be kind and decent. You always feel good about helping people or doing something positive. And so think about this. And a lot of times what we put in our body will affect our outflow. And if we're grumpy and on edge and tense and, depressed or anxious. So, start thinking about those things and just go out for a little walk, go enjoy the day, take a breath, and get out of the city a little bit, go and look at the countryside or whatever you got to do, wherever you find your peace. So that's important stuff. And go read lies that we were taught in med school, like that I was taught. So I'm gonna go find out. I might still be doing some stuff wrong, and so Doc here is gonna teach me. So have a great day. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.